September 5th, 1991, Universal Amphitheater, Los Angeles. Queensrÿche, a band that until recently was only known among heavy metal fans, appears at the MTV Video Music Awards, the biggest awards ceremony at the time, along with the Grammys, for the global music scene. They play Silent Lucidity, an acoustic ballad that a few months earlier had reached number 9 on the singles chart in America, while its video was continuously played in regular rotation on MTV. It feels like the band from Seattle, which started in 1980 as a pure US power metal and later progressive metal band, has finally made it. The album Empire, from which Silent Lucidity comes, and which had been released 1 year before the ceremony, would reach 3.5 million copies sold in the United States alone. Their name is now known on the global music scene, not just in heavy metal circles. The recognition, the glory, and the money are those of a great established rock band. A band that, as it seems, has reached its peak. The tour for the album, titled Building Empires, was the band's first full tour as headliners. It took place in arenas around the world and lasted 18 months, longer than any other tour the band had undertaken before or after. It will end in early 1992, but it will get a brief extension for 3 more appearances. One at the Grammy Awards ceremony in February 1992, one as part of MTV Unplugged at the Warner Hollywood Studios in Los Angeles on April 27, 1992, and one at a theater in the band's hometown on June 6th of the same year. The tour left deep marks on the band. All the members, except for guitarist Chris DeGarmo, ended their marriages. Some of them developed addictions that they had never had to deal with before. The mood and atmosphere in the band have changed. The guitarist often seems to be fighting alone without any help from the others. He has practically become the band's representative in the media, as well as the manager of the entire business aspect of the group. The others seem not to care about anything. As a result of the whole situation, the band's next album will take 1.5 years to record and another 6 months to mix and release. It will be called Promised Land and will be released on October 18th, 1994. It will present a dense, dark, rugged, and stiff progressive metal that likely reflects what the band had faced over the past 4 years. It is an excellent album, but it seemed completely out of place at a time when young people preferred the immediacy of grunge and alternative rock. Nevertheless, it would reach number 3 and managed to sell 1 million copies in their homeland. But it was clear that the band was not being treated by the music industry as they were during the Empire era. The tour will practically last the first 6 months of 1995. It will pass through Europe, Japan, and of course, the United States. It won't come close to the numbers of the one for Empire, but it will proceed without any unforeseen events and keep the band afloat. The band's next album would be recorded in 1996 and released on March 25, 1997, titled Here in the New Frontier. The fact that it was produced by Toby Wright, who had taken on the production of the then-recent self-titled album by Alice in Chains, plus the fact that part of the album was recorded in the personal studio of Pearl Jam guitarist Stone Gossard, should have probably prepared the band's fans for what they were about to hear. The group presents a sound that is drier and more stripped down compared to the past, something that could perhaps be called grunge or alternative rock. As you can understand, such a change could not leave the world indifferent, resulting in the reception of the album being mixed, both from the audience and the critics. The album may have entered their home country's charts at number 19, but it quickly vanished from the top 200 without a trace. The disappointment over the low sales was exacerbated by the problems that plagued the subsequent tour. Less than a month after its start, singer Jeff Tate fell seriously ill, and the band was forced to cancel concert dates for the first time in its history. At the same time, their longtime record label, EMI America Records, went bankrupt, so they had to use their own money to complete the last 2 months of the tour. After some shows in South America in December 1997, Chris DeGarmo founding member and main songwriter of the band, announced that he was leaving Queensrÿche. The band members later stated that the main reasons for his departure were fatigue and the desire to do other things. In fact, drummer Scott Rockenfield said he felt that he had done everything he wanted musically in his life and wanted to move on. However, things were not that simple. DeGarmo himself would later state, "The level of internal and external dysfunction within the band was unacceptable to me. Obviously, no one else was paying attention or cared to compare the successful elements and priorities of our past with our current course. In fact, there were quite a few things that bothered the guitarist since the band returned from the Empire Tour. First of all, as we already said, after the tour, the marriages of all the other band members had been destroyed. And this had a clear impact on the guitarist, who had been used to treating the environment around the band as an extended family, where the bonds between the members' spouses were very close. After the divorces and separations, these interpersonal dynamics changed as new girlfriends and wives entered the equation, who did not always get along well with the other band members, which in turn affected the relations between the members themselves. Also, the addictions that some band members developed after building empires caused the band to completely lose its focus, and the members to resign from the supporting part of running a successful rock group. DeGarmo was left alone to keep the business side of the band afloat as president. He was the one who encouraged the others to come together and record Promised Land, and he negotiated a loan with Virgin Records after the bankruptcy of EMI America, as the others were not interested. The departure of the guitarist was a blow from which I believe Queensrÿche never recovered. I won't talk about the business side of the matter, which will become much clearer later, but about the music. DeGarmo was the mastermind behind the band's sound, the main composer on all their albums, the person who, more than anyone else, had built the band's sound that all heavy rock fans worldwide loved. His absence proved simply impossible to fill. Beyond the love the fan base had for him, his absence was, for me, the main reason for what we will see happened in the second part of our story. After DeGarmo's departure, the band found itself at a musical crossroads, on which, it seems, it chose the wrong path. All the albums released from 1999 to 2011, with one exception that we will see soon, were a completely misguided attempt to mix the alternative direction of Here in the New Frontier with the melodiousness of Empire. In practice, both attempts turned out to be completely wrong. Their attempt to sound alternative had been doomed from the start, as the band was always considered a metal artist, and that was never going to change. Any non-metal fans who had approached them in 1990 had simply abandoned them, while contemporary alternative music fans were never going to care about a band that, for better or worse, everyone considered metal. Add to that the fact that over this period, classic heavy metal became popular again, and you understand even better how misguided this attempt was. As for their attempt to approach Empire, it was completely impossible from the moment that the person who had envisioned and built it was missing. And that person was Chris DeGarmo. Of course, a key role in the failure of the band's plans was also played by the fact that the albums they made in those 12 years were not good at all. In other words, beyond trends and labels, if someone simply wanted to listen to them as heavy rock albums without considering the band's past, they would find very few things worth listening to. Nevertheless, the band tried twice to reconnect with its past, but that led nowhere, and showed how incredibly lost and confused Queensrÿche were at that time. During the recordings of the album Tribe in 2003, the band found themselves with a significant lack of material, so they reached out to DeGarmo to see if he would be interested in contributing something. After a meeting with singer Jeff Tate, the guitarist agreed and participated in the album sessions, contributing to the composition of 5 songs and recording guitar parts. Despite participating in a photo shoot with the band, DeGarmo left again before the recordings were completed, likely for similar reasons to those that led to his departure in 1997. In fact, with the release of the album, Sanctuary Records misleadingly presented DeGarmo's participation as a reunion with Queensrÿche, something that some have considered a public relations move to boost sales. For the next album after Tribe, the band decided to play its biggest card. To release the sequel to Operation Mindcrime, which is considered by both the audience and critics as the band's artistic masterpiece, an amazing concept album that was released in 1988. In fact, Jeff Tate had not participated much in the recordings of Empire because he was writing the continuation of the story of Operation Mindcrime, a continuation that it was time to use. And the good news for the metal world didn't stop there. The role of the villain in the story, Dr. X, for the sequel, would have been played by the legendary and beloved Ronnie James Dio. Needless to say, the heavy metal universe was thrilled with these developments. But a thrill is the only thing the fans will get. As we later learned, during the recording of the album, tensions between Tate and the other members led to the final product containing minimal contributions from them. So, for example, Scott Rockenfield's drums and Michael Wilton's guitars were erased and replaced with recordings from session musicians, while practically all the songs were written by Tate, then guitarist Mike Stone, and producer Jason Slater. All of this is clearly evident in the final result. Despite the grand ambitions, the strong story, and Dio's involvement, the album is mediocre and boring and has nothing to do with the 1988 masterpiece. Nevertheless, it achieved the best chart performance since the Promised Land era, and the tour went very well, possibly because the band played both albums one after the other. All this showed the people's thirst to hear the old Queensrÿche, but the band would continue on its alternative path, and the album would prove to be just a small break. Additionally, the two albums the band released afterward, American Soldier in 2009 and Dedicated to Chaos in 2011, were slaughtered by critics and completely ignored by the public. In fact, the latter is considered by many to be one of the worst heavy rock albums of all time, regardless the artist. Obviously, the situation couldn't continue any longer. The band was at an absolute low point. Something had to happen. And it would happen, in a way so deafening that perhaps no one would have ever expected it. We were reading the news and couldn't believe it. They seemed like the episodes of a third-rate soap opera. Let's summarize them. The then members of the band, without Tate, gather on April 12, 2012, and decide to dismiss both the singer's stepdaughter, Miranda, from managing the fan club, and his wife, Susan, from the position of band manager, which she had held since 2005. The reason for the dismissals is that the band members believe that, in the last 3 years, they had reached a point where they no longer had any voice in the band, with Tate and his wife making all the decisions. 2 days later, during the sound check for a performance in São Paulo, Brazil, Tate clashed with the other members over the firing of his family. Things got heated, leading Tate to physically attack and spit on drummer Scott Rockenfield and guitarist Michael Wilton. During the band's next 3 shows, Wilton, Rockenfield, and bassist Eddie Jackson felt that Tate continued to behave poorly and called a band meeting via video conference on June 5th or 6th. Tate left that video conference, which led the other members, after a vote, to decide to fire him. The idea was that the other 4 would continue to use the name Queensrÿche with a new singer. The former frontman could not accept that and decided to take legal action to claim the name. It should be emphasized that things were further complicated by the fact that the 4th member of the band, whom we have not mentioned until now, was Miranda Tate's former boyfriend and husband for 6 months, Parker Lundgren. Eventually, Tate, along with his wife, proceeded with the lawsuit they had filed against his former bandmates, claiming wrongful termination. The complex legal dispute that followed ended in July 2012 and allowed both Tate and his 3 former bandmates, Wilton, Rockenfield, and Jackson, to use the Queensrÿche trademark until the issue was further clarified by a court ruling or settlement. So, between July 2012 and April 2014, there were 2 entities recording and touring under the name Queensrÿche, one consisting of Wilton, Rockenfield, Jackson, and Lundgren, plus the new singer Todd Latour, and the other including Tate with his own lineup. Things got even more complicated by the fact that during this period, both bands released studio albums. Jeff Tate's version, Frequency Unknown, in April 2013, and the other three, a self-titled album, 2 months later. The case ended in a settlement, which was reached on April 17, 2014. Tate lost the name to Rockenfield, Wilton, and Jackson, who, along with Latour and Lundgren, would be the sole band to record and tour as Queensrÿche. On the other hand, the singer won the exclusive right to play Operation Mindcrime and Operation Mindcrime 2 in their entirety at unique shows. As part of the agreement, there was also a monetary amount that the three would have to pay to their former singer, which would play a significant role in the events that would unfold later. The whole situation was clearly unprecedented for the rock and metal audience, especially since we had two bands with the same name touring the world simultaneously. Someone could even call it ridiculous if it weren't for the various press releases that revealed what had happened to the band over the past at least 15 years. The side of Rockenfield, Wilton, and Jackson spoke about Tate's incredible outbursts of anger, which often led to huge problems in the band's relationships, and had already begun during the Promised Land era. They believed that this side of the singer's character had led to DeGarmo's double departure. They also talked about the Tates, concealing from them business deals, concert bookings, payments, and additional expenses, as well as the involvement of the singer's relatives and friends in tours, with everything naturally being paid for by the band. Regarding what happened during the recording of Operation Mindcrime 2, besides their non-participation in the project, there was also an agreement for a film based on the story, which even included an advance payment, and which they never learned about. Tate will respond by saying that Queensrÿche was always his idea and vision, and that's why he decided to fight for the name. Regarding the fight in Brazil, he will say that while he was sitting and doing a sound check, someone from the band came and told him, "We just fired your entire family, and soon it will be your turn," which indeed made him furious. But in no way did it lead to what he was accused of. He even added that the shows went on without any problems. As for the claims regarding the business aspect, he said that no one ever came to him to say that there was a problem with what was happening and that they wanted something to be done differently. Now, regarding the musical aspect, the former frontman said that the others never brought ideas to the table, resulting in him making all the decisions about the sound, while the three claimed that they indeed brought plenty of ideas, which Tate and his family constantly downvoted, adding that they hated the musical direction the band had taken, considering it the former singer's sole responsibility. The whole situation obviously caused significant damage to the band's reputation and credibility. The revelations and detailed descriptions in the press vindicated DeGarmo and vividly illustrated the internal mechanisms of a band's operation. Searching for or finding a culprit is probably a futile effort. Clearly, there was a significant amount of dysfunction in the band for which Tate seemed to be the main responsible, but one might wonder how the others could endure it for over 15 years without doing anything. Queensrÿche released 3 more albums without Tate. In these, predictably, they play something very close to the band's original sound, as it was heard at the beginning of their career. As for the live performances, they have never played anything the band did between 1997 and 2011. As for Jeff Tate, he renamed his version of Queensrÿche to Operation Mindcrime and released 3 albums with them, and then continued with a project called Sweet Oblivion featuring Jeff Tate and did 2 more albums. As for his live performances, he plays mostly Queensrÿche songs, up to Empire, with only a few from Operation Mindcrime 2 making it to his set list. In fact, he announced that in 2026, he will release Operation Mindcrime 3. The crazy thing is that since everyone seems to hate what the band did between 1997 and 2011, why did they make it? We're not talking about 1 album. We're talking about 4 albums and 14 years of music. And while we all thought that this was the last we heard about Queensrÿche involved in legal disputes, almost out of nowhere came a sad, extra time. In March 2017, Drummer Scott Rockenfield requested a short-term departure from the band to be able to support his partner due to problems she was facing with their newborn son. The band was forced to find a temporary replacement, former Camelot drummer Casey Grillo. The temporary replacement became permanent in 2020, and while we thought that the matter ended there, the courts soon took over again. In October 2021, Rockenfield filed a lawsuit against Wilton and Jackson, claiming, among other things, breach of contract and wrongful termination. On March 10, 2022, Wilton and Jackson filed a counterclaim denying that Rockenfield was wrongfully terminated by Queensrÿche. Through announcements in the press, we learned about yet another regretful backstory of a very unfortunate situation. Scott Rockenfield claimed that since 2017 and 2018, he stopped receiving payments from the various companies behind the name Queensrÿche, of which he is a member, despite the fact that he remained an active member of the band in all matters except touring. Practically, the only amounts he received were from song royalties. On the other hand, Wilton and Jackson said that the drummer practically excluded himself from the band with his behavior. He didn't help them find a replacement. He didn't respond to their continuous questions about whether he would return to the band or not. And he didn't participate in any writing or recording process for the 2019 album, The Verdict. During the same period, the band had to pay the installments of a loan they had taken to settle the agreement with Jeff Tate, payments in which the drummer did not participate, so they decided to use his share of the company's profits for this purpose. The case was settled in December 2023. The rather miserable story I just told you reveals many things about how the world of rock, which we all love, and which is part of our life and daily routine, operates. The way one of the greatest heavy metal bands in history was destroyed was so abrupt, absolute, and unacceptable that it left all of us, fans and non-fans alike, almost dizzy. The fact that the band from Seattle had worked so hard in the 80s to reach the place they did in 91 and 92 made the way success changed them, and their inability to handle it seem even more absurd. It is certainly sad to see artists who once filled arenas and played in front of thousands at major festivals now appearing in small clubs in front of a few hundred, or at most, 1,000 to 2,000 people. Fortunately, music has remained unscathed by all this. At least no one can take it to court,